This is the Agribusiness Report. I'm Tony St. James, and we're joined today by the Honorable Vicky Hartzler. She represents the 4th Congressional District of Missouri. She's a member of the Agriculture and Armed Services Committee. Also serves on the subcommittee for Biotech, Horticulture, and Research, and Livestock and Foreign Ag, and it's a good thing that's not all included on your business card.
It is lengthy, but I feel very honored to be here. I'm a lifelong farmer. I grew up on a farm with my mom and my dad, my sister and I. We had a lot of hogs, some cattle, and raised corn and soybeans and wheat, and I married the farm boy 3 miles away, and we raise corn, soybeans, wheat, and have a cow-calf operation and also have a farm equipment business. So I'm one of the few members of Congress that still lives on a working farm, and very glad and thankful to be able to bring my firsthand experience and hopefully some common sense to legislation here in Washington.
If you don't mind, let me ask you about how things are in the district, because I think sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect, if you will, but there wouldn't be a disconnect for you, obviously, because the family's still heavily involved. But what do you see back in the district as far as ag?
Well, we're just starting to pick corn. Yields are just fair, and the prices are pretty abysmal. So it's pretty, kind of discouraging on that front. The soybeans, on the other hand, we got a few rains, and we may be able to have better yields on that. And we've been glad to see the increased sales to China and prices going up a little bit on soybeans. Getting over $10 a bushel is certainly welcome out there. But there's still a lot of uncertainty at ag country. Those of us that have cattle really been through the ringer the last couple of years, especially with coronavirus, with the prices, and they're still very low. And the pork production has been very challenged as well. So we've really gone through a lot. There's a lot of uncertainty, but there's that continual optimism that farmers have that we're going to make it through, and there's always next year. And there's no life like living on the farm, and we are proud to be able to produce food and fiber and fuel for our nation and people around the world.
You talk about living on a farm, and for those who not lived in rural communities, they may not really understand that if you do have rural broadband, you usually have one provider. There's not a second provider. And especially as you get out into those very rural areas, are you seeing that more and more, and is that becoming more pronounced in today's age?
Oh, it is a tremendous need. It is probably the #1 issue facing my district, because we just don't have access to high-speed internet in many of our parts of my district. And then this coronavirus pandemic has really shone the light on how vital it is that we accelerate efforts to get rural broadband to everyone. We had 25% of Missouri's children that could not access their homework during the pandemic. Over 1 million Missouri families don't have access to high-speed internet, and so that impacts your education. That impacts the ability of parents to be able to work at home. It stops the ability of small businesses moving to our rural communities and providing jobs because there's no access to it. And it also impacts health care. In the CARES package, we provided for more telehealth so that senior citizens could stay home and access their doctor over their computer. But a lot of my citizens and my constituents couldn't do that. And so it is vital that we make this available to everyone, and that's why in the Farm Bill we have provisions in there for the Reconnect program to provide monies for rural broadband, and that's why the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has been auctioning off areas, census data and maps of the country where there is no service right now. And so there is money available. I've just been working with my leaders at home, and whether it be companies, telecom companies, county commissioners, or rural electric cooperatives, trying to get them to apply for these grants. And I'm excited now to have 5 of my rural electric cooperatives participating in this reverse auction that's going on at the FCC. And I'm hopeful that they will get some of this money that is available from the federal level and start putting in that infrastructure that's needed, so more of my families will be able to access the internet and be brought up into the modern age.
You mentioned rural utilities, and there's been some challenges for our rural utilities as of late as well.
Sure. During the coronavirus, they've been impacted like others in that they have not turned off service when people haven't been able to pay their bills, and so it has cost them billions of dollars. And one way I'm trying to help is introducing a bill that would allow them to renegotiate their loans that they have through the USDA's Rural Utility Service. This is a way that they can access money at now it's a fairly high interest rate. At one time it was low, but where they can put in rural electricity in the area. But now the interest rates are so low, we want to give them the ability to go back and refinance those loans, and that will save billions of dollars and enable them to have more capital that they could spend on rural broadband or some other service that's needed in their area.
You also mentioned earlier meat packers, producers, and there's been some concerns on liability issues there.
Well, it was really a crisis that happened back at the beginning of the coronavirus when so many of our meat packing plants shut down because the workers were ill and they just didn't know, there was a lot of fear, didn't know what to do. And so we had many pork producers that were having to euthanize their hogs because they had nowhere to take them. And this was just a crisis upon crisis for many of our farmers. Same way with the beef producers. They weren't facing euthanizing them, but they were facing getting a very low price when on the other side, the boxed beef price was through the roof that the packers was getting. And so I worked tirelessly with the CDC and with OSHA to try to very quickly get out some clarity of the guidelines on what they need to do to safely reopen so that their employees were safe, but yet they could still operate. And thankfully, we got that clarity. The meat packing plants put in the dividers that they needed and made the changes and to try to be safe, but yet there's still this worry out there that they could be sued, even though they've tried as best they can to open. And so I did introduce a bill that would provide them with some liability protection if they made a good faith effort to try to follow the CDC guidelines so that they can open with confidence, and hoping that this can be part of a future relief package dealing with coronavirus.
And early on you mentioned the demand from some foreign buyers, and when we're talking about soybeans or pork at this point, China has been back into the market. So I'm just going to throw trade out there, and when you see that as a topic, how does it affect you and what do you see?
I think it's the key to getting our commodity prices up. We do such a great job here in America of growing our food, our animals, and we need to sell it somewhere. And so exports is where we have the real opportunity for some growth, and we can get a reasonable price for our product. And I've been very pleased with the aggressive work and dedicated work that our trade ambassadors have done, whether it be Bob Lighthizer, our U.S. ambassador overall, or Greg Dowd, who is our trade ambassador specifically for agriculture. And Ambassador Dowd met with us just last week, and it's encouraging to hear just in the not quite 4 years that the Trump administration has been working on this, over 50% of our net trade has been renegotiated. And that's a pretty astounding figure. But between the trade deal with Japan, between the USMCA, and between this phase 1 deal with China, those are seeing tremendous benefits already to us here in agriculture, and especially China is coming through. We're selling more ag products to them than we have in the last several years. And so I hope this continues, that they will continue to fulfill their obligations, and that Canada will fulfill its obligations with the dairy provisions of the USMCA, and that we can continue to look even elsewhere. I know they're working right now with trying to renegotiate a trade deal with the United Kingdom. Of course, United Kingdom just left the European Union with Brexit, and they're currently buying over $5 billion worth of pork and beef from the EU. They have a 25% tariff on our U.S. products going into the UK. And so I think there's a lot of room for opportunity there. If they could lower their tariffs on our products and look to us buying that beef and pork from us, that would open up even more markets for our pork producers and our cattlemen here in the United States.
So great to visit with you. We thank you for your time and your service. Will you come back and see us soon?
I'd love to. Thanks a lot.
Again, it's the Honorable Vicky Hartzler. She represents the 4th Congressional District of Missouri and is a member of the House Agriculture and Armed Services Committee. On today's Agribusiness Report.